hashtag #AskAlamo. We'll be looking at Twitter to pull up other questions after the episodes. But before all of that, we do have a very special guest today for this amazing afternoon of Dinosaurs. Please put your hands together for Mr. Michael Jacobs, creator of Dinosaurs. Michael, thank you so much for coming out. You want to talk about what we're going to watch today? Because I don't think these people know any of what episodes yet.
Great. Thanks for all coming out today. It's a hot day. This is an amazing series. It was very unique and wonderful in its execution. Understand that what you're watching seems to be rubber and puppetry, but it isn't. These are about 7.5 feet tall, and they're about 3.5 feet wide, and there are people inside, large people, who only reach to the head. And then on top of that are these audio animatronic computers that are their heads, and the puppeteers control them from panels offset. And what happens is, it is a massive undertaking, because the fact that they can get the eyes to move in conjunction with the mouth is tough enough. But to get these actors and then to go into ADR and put the voices in, and also, you should know that we were 6 feet high off the ground, so that the hand puppeteers were in pits, and all of the sets were raised. The show won an Emmy for best sets the first year, because they simply didn't know what to make of it, so they just said, "Here." And we had an awful lot of fun doing the show. The 3 episodes I chose for you today. The middle one, the second one you're going to see, is called Network Genius. It's when Earl takes over the ABC television company. And I thought it's a television festival this weekend, and so that would be the right episode to choose for you. You'll note some voices in there you'll recognize. Jason Alexander plays the head of the network. Bobby Picardo plays the other head. The first episode, we were trying to tackle every possible issue we could. And we did drugs. And what happened was, when we decided to do drugs, we thought we should write about these drugs. Now, we didn't do drugs at all. We were up all day and night writing. But when we tackled a drug show, what I was trying to write, what we were trying to communicate, was that as in fashion and in vogue, as the drug culture was at the time that this show was on the air, what were the costs, and could we do it and appeal to people of varying opinions? And we did. There's an interesting character in this one, and he's voiced by Chris Maloney, who you know from Law & Order, and you'll recognize him. He's the character of Spike. The third episode is one of the most controversial episodes of television, I'm told. It's our finale, when I killed them all. And Ted Harbert, who was the president of ABC, called me and said, "Over my dead body, will you kill this baby dinosaur?" That guy. And I said, "Okay, we've been trying to do something that was real. Let me look up and see what happened to the dinosaurs. No, they died. We're going to kill them." And so they allowed us to, and the way we did it is really interesting. This bunch beetle, who is the cause of the extinction of the dinosaurs, his voice is mine. And it was an awful lot of fun. I did all of these little small creatures through the series, and this one was especially fun. You know the core cast, people like Stu Pankin and Jessica Walter, and Sally Struthers, and Sherman Hemsley, and Jason Willinger, and we had a blast, but the show was done 2 ways. 1, the execution of the puppetry. 2, going into the ADR studio and putting the voices to them. It was an amazing show and an amazing time, and I hope you enjoy these episodes.
Thank you so much. We'll be back up for conversation and Q&A afterward. You guys have a good time? Up until right at the end? So one thing we ended up watching a different second episode than we thought we were going to watch. Fortunately, it was also brilliant. But Network Genius is the other one that was going to play second, and our video team was like, "This is also about TV." After this, you have to go home and download Network Genius and watch that also because it's really brilliant. But please put your hands together for Mr. Michael Jacobs, creator and killer of Dinosaurs. It's a mood changer, that finale. You talked about how the network head told you not to do it and you did it anyway. How did that come about? When did you know that was what you wanted to do?
Well, Dinosaurs won every environmental award that was out there. As a matter of fact, there's a group called the Environmental Media Association, and we won every year. I think the show's on 4.5 years, and so we went to 4 of these awards, and we won each of the 3 years, and in the 4th year, there were no other nominations because of the finale, and they said, "We're giving you the Legendary Award." And it's very interesting. I was always very proud of that show, and I continue to be very proud of it. There was nothing else on it, and immediately after that, I think, was Full House. So the interesting thing about it is that when you watch it today, and it talks about, you put all your eggs in the basket of corporate greed and technology, is there something that suffers? Certainly, we've only gone farther in that direction. We don't know what the ultimate cost is going to be. If I was fair at all, I would certainly have said, I would have written about all of the magnificent things technology does for us. But I saw that the world was directional, and I wanted to write a parable about that direction. We haven't changed course. In the end, it was a comedy, but in the end, the metaphor was supposed to speak to our human experience, and these dinosaurs were supposed to emulate our human experience. They went extinct. The line that I always took is that we've been around for 150 million years. There's not going to come a day where we just disappear. And I thought that it was very responsible to put that into the minds of our young audience as well as our older audience. We were a bimodal show. We had both young and old. And I stand behind it to this day, and I'm very proud of it.
It definitely stuck in my mind as I was watching it, and then was like, "What just happened?" Was there other kind of reaction that you noticed the weeks after?
Yeah, there were a whole bunch of articles, and everybody had written about it. Nobody negatively. I expected a backlash, but it was all very positive. The show had generated some wonderful reviews. We got our share of good and bad reviews. Again, I think when you talk about technology, if we did this show now, it would look far different. You had to understand that this was puppetry. And I think that a lot of CGI work would be done today. The world that surrounded this would not be foam rubber. It would be much like they're doing the Hobbit, Smog, and these creatures, but they cost millions of dollars. Our budget was not quite that. However, the leap that we would make in the look of the show would be very significant. But the writing of it, what we wanted to talk about, the second episode that I wanted to show you was, in fact, where Earl became the president of the network. And the shows that he put on were remarkably simplistic. One was called The Happy Colors Show, and the other one was called Box Full of Puppies. And the intent there, he became prolific and wonderful, was to say that television runs in cycles. And there's nothing wrong with The Happy Colors Show and Box Full of Puppies. But if we don't also reflect the real world we live in, then we strike no balance. Now, contemporary television, what's airing now, is so observational and so wonderful, and I think that the cable networks have certainly begun to exceed what the networks do or can do or want to do, as far as being observational to what really goes on out there. So it is a wonderful device of communication, and will always continue to be. I just think it's the courage and the spontaneity of the show creator to bring to the audience what is actually happening, along with happy colors and Box Full of Puppies.
So the creation of this show, how did that come to be, and how, like, I'm interested both in more of that story, and then also when you first saw the puppetry that you were going to have to kind of work with and write for, and if that was limiting or expanding for the
It was both.
development.
It was both. The development of the show, Jim Henson had an idea about a domesticated family of dinosaurs, which was a remarkable idea. And then Jim passed, and his son Brian came to me and asked if that was fully realized and what we could do. And I said that I thought it was a remarkable idea, but I wanted to add one little tweak. And he said, "What?" I said, "That dinosaurs fell in love and had children and got married is what brought about their ultimate extinction," was something that I thought was very sellable and very satirical. And we called ABC, and ABC agreed with us. And ABC spent a lot of money in the build and the look, which was certainly cutting edge then. We premiered, remember, it was a kid show. It was part of TGIF. And your question as to what was limiting about it was that in the realization that this was going to be puppetry, the thing that made the Muppets, I think, so wonderfully successful was you got that this was a puppet frog and a puppet pig and all other kinds of furry and non-furry creatures. But what you also received was such wit and such charm that you stopped thinking of them that way. As Dinosaurs aired, we captured all of the kids. We got a 71% share in the pilot of that demographic. It was unheard of. 6 episodes in, the numbers were so extraordinary that we were moved to Wednesday at 8 o'clock. 6 episodes. We were at the tentpole show. We were starting off Wednesday. We lost a bunch of kids because we had been on the weekend, and we lost a bunch of adults because the kids were not watching it Wednesday at 8 o'clock. But the number was strong enough that we continued there for the next 4 years. I think had we run on Friday, if we had continued Friday, we'd be on the air today. I think that the kids responded so well because they understood that what the shows were about, much like what they do so brilliantly on The Simpsons, is satirically based. Bart Simpson, this is not a kid. Lisa's not a kid. These are representatives of all of us. Homer, is somebody that we absolutely love to listen to. His intelligence is questionable to such a severe degree that it's what makes it so much fun for us. In fact, The Simpsons, I think that Maggie was watching television, and Bart said, "What are you watching?" And they said, "We're watching that show with the smart mouth baby and the teenager," and they were saying we ripped them off completely, and sure we did. But you were also attracted to brilliance, and we also believed that The Simpsons were brilliant. We didn't rip them off. We had a remarkable idea that I thought was unique and interesting, and we pursued it. But certainly the satirical aspect of the show was something that there were only a couple of shows on the air doing it. We ran into trouble almost every week because what we were trying to do was tear down television's convention. And we went through that prop TV almost every episode into the type of shows that were on the air and are satirizing what the audience was accepting and what the audience felt was popular. And as the show grew, we started receiving these wonderful accolades, these wonderful articles saying that what we were attempting to do with a kids' television show was wonderful. I think, to your question, there were severe limitations. I mean, I'm watching this thing and wincing at the lines that were not coming out of the mouths correctly, and when the eyes were off and the mouths were off. But it never mattered. I don't think that technology, which was astounding in its time, mattered as much as what we were all trying to put forward. I think that a father and son dancing and doing a Broadway musical number, being high from a plant that they found outside, and then complaining that there were only seeds and stems left, and the fact that the addictive nature of something that could be found right outside your door, that it was up to us to control ourselves, is part and parcel of the whole series. And we're all very proud of that.
Yeah, that whole. I don't remember watching that episode as a kid. I know that I did, but I don't remember like the way that the finale hit me. But I'm sure that I was very confused for at least the first half about what I want a happy plant. I don't want a happy plant. So as you're like, can you talk a little more about dealing with issues like, because the ending of the happy plant is just so brilliant and spot on. Where
Thanks.
it's
We
just
did a PSA. We did,
Yeah.
We did. My favorite part of it, I laughed out loud because I had forgotten, was when the cameraman says to Robbie, "Nice job," and Robbie says, "Nice to meet you," which is exactly, after 100 episodes of television, your crew is the most important people, and saying that he never even met the guy was remarkable and true, unfortunately. We tackled every issue we could. We did an episode with Jason Alexander, played this. There was a show on the air with us called Designing Women. I don't know if you remember Designing Women. It was Linda Bloodworth's show. And they had done sexual harassment in the workplace. They did the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill hearings. We had done the same thing. What was very interesting was when I was comparing the shows and the episodes, Designing Women being a wonderful television show, we were able to get away with more because we were puppets. We were able to say, when human beings said these things, it was as if you were taking political sides, and you sort of had a better episode if you were either unbiased or neutral or completely biased so that the audience understood what you were doing. We were able to do much more. For instance, Jason Alexander played a character named Harris, and Harris worked at this corporation, and Monica, her name was Monica the Vertebrae. She was only a neck and a head. She was a brontosaurus. She was a purple, but she was suffering a terrible divorce. And the ramifications of that divorce forced her to go to work, which was unheard of because there were no females in the workplace in Pangea. And she was the first. And immediately, Harris, the character, Jason, started making snide comments about Monica in the workplace, and they were sexual in nature. And so Earl began to call him, he nicknamed him Sexual Harris. And the thing was that he never understood what he was saying because these dinosaurs were not that way. But Jason Alexander's character was, of course, written that way. But they never understood what he meant. And so Earl went around going, "I wonder what Sexual Harris meant." And so what happened was we were contacted by the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. And they said, "We cannot show the troops human beings doing this. May we have that episode?" And this episode about sexual harassment in the workplace was shown to the armed forces, and we got commendations from the military for finding a way that the audience would tolerate the message. All of a sudden, we were called by police forces in at least 70 different cities, and sheriff's departments, and all of these letters coming in, thanking us for finding a way to do that. So we never stopped. We started tackling absolute hard. We talked about abortion. We talked about women's rights, and we talked about pro-life. We talked about fairly and with great equality, every possible point of view. And all of a sudden, adults started coming back to the show. And that second episode, which you saw, it was not one of our better episodes. It was a fine episode, a little bit pedantic, a little bit heavy-handed. What it attempted to do, which I thought it did well, was we shifted television at the time we were on television. Programs became almost soft R-rated on network. This was before cable, way before Game of Thrones, way before HBO and Showtime made inroads. On television, there was salty language, and people were making a great to-do about it. And we decided to satirize it as it was happening. And the point we were, of course, making was television will find its way, and hopefully the audience will reject or accept what they choose to. But if the government gets into this, because that's what was being discussed, government control was dirty language, comparable dirty language for what existed in the day, obscenity. And did the government have the right to get in? So we made up a word, but you know what the word was, and we made up 2 other words, and you know what those words were. All of those words are now on television. And the real question is, can children access them? And the answer is yes. And what our episode said was, parents need to take control, and in raising children correctly, and bringing an environment within the home that teaches children what's going on. Education is the finest thing we can give our children. And that's what we tried to say, and I'm proud of that. It goes on. There were episodes also where we did it with school. What's the responsibility of the school to raise our children, and what's the responsibility of of parents to raise children? And we always cited solely, it is the responsibility of parents to raise children. It's the responsibility of parents to understand what goes on in school every day. We did so many episodes when the kids came home and the parents asked what happened in school, nothing, and they accepted that. But that was a staple of network television. We just did it well because we were puppets, so we could go much farther than network television could. There was never backlash to it, but there was commendation. I just wish we had, speaking of technology, if I could do this show over again, the look would be so significantly different. And I think it would be amazing. And the look and feel of it would go right along with what's happening right now, and it would be very contemporary, because in watching that final episode, nothing has changed.
Yeah. So we're going to do some questions from audience members. I'm going to start with one off of Twitter, because this I agree this would be fun. Glenn Oliver is asking if you can do the voice of the bunch beetle for us.
Well, that's just me talking, isn't it? That's just this voice here. Yeah, we did these little creatures, and I wanted to do a big creature. My voice is very, very thin, and they never let me. And I was running a show, and they never let me cast myself as one of the big creatures. But there were little creatures that they ate, these little tiny creatures, and I was that voice. But the bunch beetle was. I wish I had asked Brian for that puppet. I would love to have that puppet at home. But that's just my voice, just like this.
Suddenly felt like you were coming on to me. I saw a question right here. Go. Yeah, and we'll repeat it too.
Okay, so first of all,
somebody whose boss is watching live in San Antonio, so.
Your employee is not at work.
Yeah.
I think that I think, as I said, that the look of the show would be very different. I would do it darker. My feeling was that kids, we did Happy Color Show for a reason. I remember the lyrics. It's a happy color show. It's the happiest show we know. There's blue and green and aquamarine. And we did this beautiful theme song for it, and it was nothing. And that's my problem. My problem always was there was no substance. And we wanted to try to give substance, and that's where we always got blowback. I would darken it even more today. As I look at what children, I have this theory of television. It's called the Pong theory. Do you remember the game Pong? It was the first video game. And it was just this little diode, this square white diode, and you'd hit it with paddles, and it would go from side to side. That's what that is. Today, kids are playing video games where they have to be on 8 different worlds, 8 screens split at the same time. They have avatars and not just one. They think differently. They think faster. They think faster than we do. We cannot play those games. I certainly can't get near those games. But they do, and they have it, and they learn from it. They are not going to be interested in Pong television. What they are going to be interested in is a real attempt to create a world. My kids who are here absolutely love Game of Thrones. And I understand what is on Game of Thrones, but I allow them to watch it. I should say that the youngest is 18 years old. And the thing about the show is, it's just so good. You watch something like that, or you watch The Sopranos, or you watch television where you think, should an 18-year-old be able to watch The Sopranos? So, as opposed to what? Should I start listing the shows that are on network that I would much rather have my kid, who is well capable of understanding what is right for him to watch and what is wrong for him to watch? I would rather his brain not be drilled out. I would rather, as he told me once, as Daniel said, I used to watch The Simpsons, and I would watch it with my older brothers and my older sister, and they would laugh at it and they would love it, and I didn't understand half of it, but I knew it was good, and I knew that I would watch it again, and he did. And the thing is that kids get quality. So what I would do is I would darken it. I would talk about today's world, and as proof of that, I did a show 20 years ago which was called Boy Meets World, and what we did with that show was we set it in its time, and Disney asked me to do a sequel, and I finally decided that I would, because it's such a vastly different world. And Girl Meets World is darker than Boy Meets World, even though it runs on Disney Channel. But it's been embraced, and it's a show that is loved by kids because it's so honest. So the quick answer to your question is, I would be as honest as I could be while making the show look as fascinating and as cutting edge technologically as I could. But the subject matter, the exact same.
Another random question from Twitter here. Stephen Schaffer just says, my girlfriend had a crush on Robbie. Normal, or should I be worried? I like you're nodding like, oh yeah, I get this question a lot.
That is the 40th time I've heard that. What it is Robbie was interesting. He was molded after the, let's say, not specifically, but the teenage heroes of the day, which would have been Kirk Cameron's and Michael Fox, and Jason's voice was sort of reminiscent of Michael Fox's voice. We did that on purpose, and he became, they used to have, what was it, Bop and Teen Beat, these magazines,
Yeah.
and they would have these posters of Kirk Cameron and Michael Fox, and it was one of Robbie Dinosaur, and I thought
Like
that
shirtless on bed with
Right,
his name
yeah,
spelled in pink?
Yeah, it was very interesting to me. We weren't trying to create a teen idol, but the answer to Stephen's question is, yeah, you should be worried. But you know what? If your girlfriend's choice is between a dinosaur puppet and you're going to have a long, good relationship.
Question here. Question
Thanks.
is,
That's nice of you to say.
to talk about the episode, The Greatest Story Ever Sold, as one of the best pieces of satire on television ever.
Thanks. We were a deeply spiritual group, and it was a show that tackled religion. And it wasn't that it tackled pure religion. It wasn't that it tackled people's beliefs. It was a show about the commercialization of religion and the exploitation of people's deepest, most precious beliefs. Yeah, I agree. It was a fascinating show, and I really have to commend the network for letting us do it. By that time, we had been established. I also have to say that this was an ABC Disney show, and we did a show called Variations on a Theme Park, where we attacked not Disneyland or Legoland or any of the theme parks, but the commercialization of what these could become if corporations were left to their own devices without the public finally stepping in and being victorious in raising their children and demanding what their children should have to visit and to learn from. But I really appreciate you picking out that episode. We're here to talk about dinosaurs, but I want to tell you that in the show I'm currently doing, which is called Girl Meets World on Disney Channel, they were generous enough to let me do, 2 weeks ago, our episodes are called Girl Meets This, Girl Meets That. We did Girl Meets Belief. And because I think that every creator does variations on the themes that he deeply believes, I did a show about a school teacher. We couldn't do it in school because it would be illegal, but he's the father of the lead girl. And the lead girl is very interested in why her best friend doesn't pray and does not believe in God. And she wonders what is correct. And one of the kids in their core group is very science-oriented. And there are very extraordinary, severe, extreme opinions and a fight between the kids as to what is correct. And the father gives an assignment. One is to study Joan of Arc, because do we hear the voice of God in our head? And can we not be considered sane if we do? Are we burned at the stake if we do? And the other group is given Thomas Jefferson. And they think that they're supposed to study about the Declaration of Independence and about the equality of men, and it's not it at all. The beauty part of the episode turns that what Corey Matthews wanted his daughter to discover was that when Jefferson was in Virginia, he wrote a Bill of Rights for Virginia. And what he started was to talk about a free nation must first have religious freedom, the ability to discover a belief system and what it is that you will dedicate your life to. Your beliefs must not be government run or sponsored or run by corporations or affected so that a man or a woman or a child can reach a belief system and be free to hold to it. That is something that I have always believed and is sacred about living in the United States. And again, nothing has changed. And this is what is, of course, in the news. So thanks for bringing up that episode. This episode on Girl Meets World is going to run, I believe, in September, and is also, I hope, as remarkable. Thanks.
So you don't take television seriously at all?
Listen, I get to talk to millions of people every week, and if I stop taking it seriously, then I shouldn't be allowed to work.
Unless they were really happy colors. I saw a hand here.
I'm kind of amazed that the themes that you take on throughout the series are not controversial, but really insightful and hard-hitting and they make you think. And this is not what I think of when I think of ABC or network television. Am I missing something? I mean, was it a different culture then, or it sounds like you're having a very similar experience with the show that you're doing now? But can you speak to that network climate?
Yes, we had to fight every week. I just think that the show should be about something. I've been lucky enough to have a career, and they keep tolerating me, and I'm able to talk about with my staff the things that I want to talk about. And as I look back at the body of work, listen, I started with Charles in Charge. We weren't doing anything very groundbreaking on Charles in Charge, except for the fact that Scott Baio really preferred raising children to going out with Willie Ames, Buddy Lembeck. And it was this eternal triangle between Charles and Buddy and Gwendolyn, where Gwendolyn loved him because he loved kids and was serious-minded and thought, what is next for me? And I did a show called My Two Dads, which had the same theme. It was a triangle, except it was two fathers and this little girl. One was a liberal, one was a conservative, and they blended together to form an effective family. In these shows, which were much lighter, there was still an overriding theme which continued on to Cory and Topanga, which is, Cory is torn between Sean and Topanga. He's in the middle. Does he pursue love with a young girl at that time? And he did, and it was a remarkable relationship. Again, I know we're talking about dinosaurs, but I'll tell you one quick story. President of ABC, who was the same fellow, he's a wonderful guy. His name is Ted Harbert, and Ted and I have had a long relationship. And Ted called me, as I said, and said, over my dead body, are you killing that baby dinosaur? And I said, okay, don't watch. And he said, over my dead body, are you going to marry two 19-year-olds? It is irresponsible. It is irresponsible television. And I said to him, Teddy, do me a favor. You have this thing called abc.com. It's brand new. They hadn't used it. Use it. Ask a question. Put a graphic on the bottom of Sabrina the Teenage Witch and say, should Cory and Topanga get married? He said, Michael, we'll get maybe 5,000 hits. It's a waste of time. And I said, do it. And he said, okay, I'm going to do it. We should use it. Let's use it. 10 minutes, 220,000 hits, and it broke. And 220,000 people said, what do you think we're waiting for? And Ted called me at 10 o'clock the following morning and said, would you please marry them in sweeps? And so we did. But this is about technology. Now I'm doing a television series for the first time where it's like potato chips. I can't get off Twitter. And
I know.
I'm listening to what everybody says, and I hear it immediately, and I pay attention to it. Sometimes I can't, but a lot of the times this is the audience, and I pay attention. No, you're not missing anything. There are shows on the air that won't go near this sort of stuff, and there are shows on the air now that I think are remarkable in what they are tackling. A lot of these are on cable. I think that the networks, for the most part, are more mainstream. And I think that they have to be. But I also think that they suffer. I think that they suffer in that there are certain standards and practices they must adhere to, but the world doesn't adhere to those standards and practices. And the things that we hear about every day and kids have access to, the screens that are in their pockets and the screens that are here in movie theaters and home on the wall as television. They have access to things today that they, even in Boy Meets World, Ben was 18, 19 years old and did not know the topics that we're talking about now because kids are 10 and 11 years old and they already know. So should I keep it from them, or is that naive? And I choose to pursue it. But the television landscape, yes, there are some wonderful flowers and then there are some bare bushes. It's up to the audience to determine what should sustain.
There's another hand coming up over here on that last one. Another? Yeah, over there?
Yes, I was just wondering, in terms of the performances of the characters and stuff, how much of that was determined on set by like the puppeteers and by the people in the suits, and how much was determined in the recording booth by the actors who were doing the voices?
That's interesting. They left me pretty much alone after
Really, I'm
after
sorry, really
they
quick, I
saw.
want to make sure that the people in the other theaters know if they couldn't
Oh,
hear the
sure,
question.
please repeat.
This is about how much of the performance is the puppeteers on stage and how much of it is the actors doing the dialogue after the ADR booth.
It was a remarkable collaboration. Brian was very generous. I had an idea that we should have celebrities voice the characters. Because it was network television, and because I thought at that point that Jessica Walter, who is the voice of Fran and Stu Pankin and Sherman Hemsley and Sally Struthers, and all of the guest cast that we had, which were remarkable actors, and I knew that there would be a load of guest stars. I thought that it would be really interesting if we tried it. Brian had resistance, of course, but also realized that this was a coming thing. After Dinosaurs, animation with celebrity voices and puppeteering with celebrity voices became sort of de rigueur. It never hurt the legacy of Jim and Brian and the Hensons, and they'll be back this season with a Muppet Behind the Scenes show. I will also say that in deference to all of the people that I worked with, I have to tell you that the voice of the baby, which was done by Kevin Clash and was done by the Henson puppeteer, was just remarkable. My kids, I never got it. I thought Kevin was doing Elmo. Kevin was in the pit. He's down there. I'm standing up, and I go, all right, what do you like for the voice of baby? And he goes, la, la, la. And I go, it's Elmo. And he goes, not Elmo. And he goes, la, la, la. I go, it's Elmo. And he said, bring your kids over. And so I brought my kids over, and they're this big, and they're 5 years old. And he goes, hi, kids. And they go, Elmo. And then he goes, hi, kids. Nothing. And I said, okay, it's not Elmo. In music, it was a third down. It was a little bit thicker. But every time I listened, I just want to hear Elmo say "not the mama" once, and I'm certain. The answer to your question is it was very collaborative. What went on set was this: we would do the table reading. The puppeteers would get the reading. The puppets themselves were controlled, their facial expressions. ABC wanted to know, are the eyes going to be convincing enough? That was the main thing. Will the eyes register? And the eyes were very good. And then, of course, are the mouths. You realized that we were out of sync 10, 15% of the time. But it didn't matter because we were getting the story. When we went into the ADR, when it was out of sync on the set, we simply wrote new words for the voice actors to fit in the mouths of the puppets. But I will say that there were two shows. One was on set with the action and with the expression and the movement. And the other show was done in the ADR booth because we had to look at what was on screen and we had to voice the emotion that was registering on the face. So what was written a lot of the time wasn't quite correct. And Bob Young and I and the rest of it was a remarkable writing staff. They've all gone on to great success. Victor Fresco, who's an executive producer of many shows, Tim Doyle, who's executive producing Tim Allen now, and Captain on the Pan, Rob Hewlin, and I apologize to all of those that I'm not mentioning. It was a remarkable staff. But Bob Young, who was my partner, and I, we would get together and we would look at the film and realize this doesn't hold. And so we go into the ADR room and we'd always have a pen and we would always write in the booth with the actors. For the most part, as the show went on, we started to get it because we were able to read the real emotions on set and we could make set changes. But I think it was a remarkable collaboration of the puppeteers, of the people inside the suit. There was one of our actors who was inside one of the suits, got terribly sick in the suit one day. And we stopped down our whole method of the way we shot it. The pilot was shot. It was an 8-day pilot, which was ridiculous. We could have shot that in 4 days. But the thing was, we wanted to make it look so real that, we were dealing with foam rubber. So what do? We put smoke. We darkened it. And all of a sudden we realized the best thing we could possibly do is lighten this up, give everybody a safe and serene working environment. We were wearing gas masks in the filming. And one day I said, my buddy here, it was Leif Tilden was his name, is getting sick in the, you know what? And I took my mask off and they said, you can't take that mask off, Michael. And I said, that's the problem. Everybody take the masks off. Look at these people who are working here. And so what we did was we got rid of all of the smoke. We put the lights up and we did what we perceived to be a comedy with interesting dialogue. But it's because of the collaboration of what went on the set. It was everybody visited to see how the show was being done. That's what made it become the show that it eventually became. So thanks for the question. It was a remarkable collaboration.
So we're running low on time. Let's do one, maybe two more. You started to raise your hand here in the front.
I'm kind of fascinated by your take on parental control and censorship. And I guess as a dad of a 7-year-old daughter, I'm real curious.
Who is here sitting next to him, just so wherever he takes this question, she's going to learn the answer as well.
I guess I just want, I was kind of hoping she'd be the rest of the show. What do you find as age appropriate, and what do you see as a difference between sexual content versus violence versus language, and then how do you know how much to control her internet use, cell phone use versus...
Okay, so his question starts with what is age appropriate, and now I think he's also asking you to raise his daughter for him.
I will tell you that
how much internet?
What's your name? What's your name? Brett. No, yeah. Abby. I love that all of these people came to watch the show today, but I'm only interested in you. The point is that these people around you, they're adults, they're formed, they're cooked. You are watching things, and you are making decisions about what you like and what you don't like. But you're very smart. And the only way I'm going to reach you is to put subjects on the air that you're interested in and that you recognize. As far as sexual content goes, I don't do that. Don't do that. Didn't do it with the puppets, and I don't do it on the air with Boy Meets World or Girl Meets World. I talk about love. I talk about a boy who fell in love with a girl at a young age, and it was absolutely impossible for that relationship to continue. They broke up 17 times and then got back together. He met somebody else. I tried to do a metaphor for a complete relationship and a loving one, and we also had a honeymoon night. But what is my responsibility as far as you ask, sex and violence in content goes? That's not me. You have to go elsewhere for that. The most violent I've ever been is a puppet hitting another puppet with a pot. I will say that it's important that it's real for the kids, because I won't get them if it's not. I will tell you that Boy Meets World was more innocent than Girl Meets World, and Girl Meets World is on Disney Channel, and the network is fine. The reason is because of if we are really meeting a world. What's out there, what she will have access to, that's what needs to be controlled. What she is allowed to look at. I'll tell you, way back, I didn't know what paper I was signing. I should have been more rigorous. But do you remember that there was this vice president, and his name was Dan Quayle? And Dan Quayle came out, and Dan Quayle said that Murphy Brown should not be a single mother on and everybody went wild because it was, there was an awful lot of disagreement with that. And Dan Quayle also said another thing. He said they should not abolish Family Hour on television. And nobody went wild about that, but they sort of did get rid of television for directly suited for families. And what happened was, Friends, which is a wonderful television series, and it's certainly innocuous and innocent as far as that goes, was at 9:30, I believe, on Thursday night, I think. And the next year it went to 8 o'clock because it was a big hit. So that meant for the first year, people that were watching a 9:30 program, I only single out Friends because it's what I remember, were able to watch it at 8 o'clock. So younger people had new topics of conversation to have on the school playground. But they had to know the subject matter that was being discussed in Friends. And so suddenly there was new dialogue. So what is the responsibility of a parent? Because if Friends was 20 years ago, what is now? And what is a father or a mother's responsibility? I simply think it's to watch the shows that their young children are watching. And they will make a quick determination if this is right or wrong for them. I don't think there's much on network television that is detrimental, except what is stupid, because kids are not. Kids are smart. And I would much rather watch something that you might deem somewhat controversial, that is handled in a manner that is educational and fair, than I would about Sally dropped her harmonica under the couch and we're going to take a half hour to find it.
So is Abby caught up on Game of Thrones?
I have no problem whatsoever and take full responsibility for Abby growing up on that show.
So I think we are out of time. You're a wonderful storyteller and a great answerer of all these questions. One more round of applause for Michael Jacobs, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you to everybody else watching at Other Alamos. As always, if you haven't already, please do tip your server, and we'll see you next time. Michael, you have a plane to catch.
I do.